Yeah, it's always easier to speak when you are unmuted. Thanks for the introduction, Sam. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so we're starting a next talk. My goal will be to present a successful transformation to the serverless architecture and mindset. And yes, I said mindset because I strongly believe that the biggest challenge with the serverless adoption is in our attitude as a software developers and software engineers. And I will try to show you and prove that statement. One caveat, my talk will be a counterweight for the awesome talk from Charlotte. There will be no such thing like coding and live coding, successful especially. So I will talk more about this particular use case, but in practice. Um, yeah, Sam gave a great introduction of me. If you would like to find me on the internet, my handle is Afronski, or you can find me on the website awsmaniac.com. Outside of that, I'm usually doing some help with the conferences and meetups. Also, I'm a translator of the Running Serverless by Gojko Agit, by the Polish version. So uh, I don't expect that somebody will know Polish here, but if you know, there's a Polish version of that book as well. Yeah, enough of this shameless plug. Let the story begin. The whole idea for the talk and for the main topic is related with the close cooperation with one of our clients. And it started as a usual way when it comes to the like IT consulting and advisory projects. We get an inquiry. But this was rather interesting inquiry because clients said that they cannot evolve, scale their current application state, and they have a lot of troubles when it comes to the deployments, when it comes to the CI/CD, scaling the team, and so on and so on. When we dive deeper, it turns out that they are basically having a monolithic architecture, at least from the iceberg point of view, a tip of the iceberg that we thought initially. This sounds great because it's a proper motivation for ditching out the monolithic architecture. So that's what we do, and that's what we would love to help with. So it started with the regular work. We did the first step, so a review in the AWS account, a reconnaissance. We scheduled an initial meeting with them, and last but not least, we planned a kickoff workshop to get started and get ready for the traction. And the review revealed actually a typical syndrome for the unfinished business, unfinished cloud migration. At the beginning, obviously, there's an euphoria when it comes to moving to the cloud. You move everything, you are happy with building the momentum, everyone is excited, and it stops. Why it stops? Most likely because we didn't change our behaviors, utilization patterns, and so on and so on. As an effect, we are using cloud, in this particular example AWS, like a hosting when we are spending like 8 grand per monthly on the infrastructure as a service solutions and services. And by the way, this is a common problem related with the cloud migrations, but also with setting up multi-clouds and similar stuff. It sounds great on paper. In practice, it is a hard thing to do. And especially when it comes to the multi-cloud, if you would like to extract a common denominator and effectively use just the virtual machines, storage, and probably virtualized networking, you will be basically stripping off the cloud benefits from you. And this is not how we should use the cloud. It's like tipping a toe in the ocean and claiming that you are swimming right now. On the other hand, it requires huge effort, resources, and courage to do a deep dive. But that was just the tip of an iceberg, as I said. When we do the initial discovery meeting, we have revealed another problem. It is not only a monolithic architecture, but monolithic infrastructure. One beefy EC2 instance that holds everything, including beefy SQL server with multiple databases. At the same machine, we've got multiple Windows services that are huge and monolithic, and applications doing so much work that are constrained by this beefy but still constrained box. And we wanted to step back here a little. So I know that it's very easy to throw statements and judge that this is a bad pattern or bad architecture. Like, whoa, what an ugly monster. First things first, that's rude. It's someone's brainchild, so how dare you? And secondly, it's earning money. So on a daily basis, it's actually much better than a paid consultant that says you that you are doing something wrong. So it is a challenge and someone that already feels the pain of the database migration that is just around the corner. Because we clearly see that if you would like to separate all those problems, you need to exclude the database from the host and so on and so on. That's not something you want to touch as a first place. Additional problem with that database is that, according to the diagram, they're using this database like a queue. And this has several problems, starting with basically heavy purges that affects everybody else, going through scalability, table sizes, ending with the architectural issues like rigidity and coupling through database. Again, it's easy to judge, but it works, earns money. We need to solve that, and we need to attack this efficiently. The right question to ask is how to replace that structure efficiently. And being completely serious, what we can do here, because there's additional problem related with this particular client. Microservices are not helping here at all, because I think that we need to react much smarter. If we will introduce microservices, we will need to spend time to learn and gain the operational knowledge in the first place. But those two problems are at the moment severely hurting the company. So we don't have so much time and years to learn this operational knowledge, build it, spend time on redesign, complete replacement, and so on and so on. Another example, maybe can we use some technology like Kubernetes? First and most importantly, this company does not use containers at all. So plain VMs, Windows services, no operational development knowledge about the Docker, not talking about Kubernetes itself. And secondly, Kubernetes itself will not solve the problem of the monolithic application anyway. So we decided to do a different approach and different strategy here. We basically, instead of going through the dive deep and 2 years long migrations, we applied another constraints on ourselves and gave ourselves 6 months to deliver a valuable business solutions. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but adding more constraints to the problem allows you to solve them more efficiently, because you need to focus on the right things. You need to prioritize properly. And time box is a very useful constraint, because according to the Parkinson law, which is lurking in the dark, any kind of work tends to expand so as it fills the time available for the completion. So basically you will spend as much time as you can on solving the task. Then we apply the decomposition and we seek for the happy paths and the business value that is hidden there. In this way, we have identified the architecture seams when we listed most painful points, where most were related with the data intake, but also scalability and integration with other subsystems. And we deliberately skimmed over the database migration project because we clearly observed that it's not feasible to do in a 6 months time frame, as it is heavily tangled not only with our part of the system, but also with other multiple subsystems and various components. However, as a side effect, at the end I will tell about that, we returned to that topic with much clearer head, and we actually starting the redesigning and untangling the database anyway. But that was a side effect that we didn't expect. So let's talk about the scope of this 6 months pilot project that we choose. First things first, let's talk about the services. We have identified that we can use Amazon S3 and Amazon SQS for the incoming transactions instead of using the queue inside the database. And that was already a huge win because we can employ such stuff like S3 lifecycle instead of periodical purges of the databases. So we offloaded everything to the fully managed service in order to save some time and resources. Another quick win was related with when we have too many files to operate on S3. And if you would like to move those files and do some batch operations on that, S3 has another functionalities that allows you for that. So another great win when it's choosing that particular service to fit here. Also, such stuff like Amazon Athena and others help with the troubleshooting and debugging during the process, because clearly we need to have visibility in those transactions anyway. When it comes to the processing pipeline, we are essentially leveraging the SQS for incoming events, and for the processing side, we are using AWS Fargate for stateful processors and AWS Lambda for stateless processors. The difference between those two is, as name suggests, in some cases we need to have a state from the database. We are leveraging DynamoDB here as a hot cache and also configuration layer. But additionally, we can have logic split and do some stateless processing on the Lambda, which is much easier for us to manage and to not worry about the operational side. When it comes to the troubleshooting and errors, we leveraging SQS again with the dead letter queues. This allows us to both for reprocessing and troubleshooting. Last but not least, we still have this legacy database at the end. So how to avoid to hammering this database down? And we basically came up with a not ideal but working solution when we have basically a concurrency controlled writer via SQS queue and controlled either AWS Fargate or AWS Lambda, depending on the use case. And then we can actually control the and scale down those ability when it comes to the parsing layer and processing layer, and then save some resources when it comes to the catching up with the legacy database and not hammer it down. And we have identified additional wins in the process, and some of them were related with the tools anyway. So first things first, we have the ability to leverage the AWS serverless application model, which is out the first experience with the CloudFormation. If we will tackle the whole issue of introducing too many things to the team, CloudFormation is another problematic thing that you can introduce, and you can kill the spend so many time to learn that operational knowledge and learn the intrinsic details and quirks and so on and so on. Instead, we actually offloaded that to the SAM, and that helped us when it comes to the development layer. Additionally, we've got a huge amount of luck. Some of you who are working with .NET Core in AWS knows that AWS is not particularly hesitant to add new versions very quickly, but thankfully 3.1 landed just in time when it comes to the Lambda support for us. And the migration from 2.0 to the 3.1 was instantaneous, and people actually did that job very well. When it comes to the choosing proper cutoff points, this also helped us tremendously, because, as I said, leaving the database as is helped us to save some resources, and scalability was not a huge problem for that particular solution. As it turns out, it was more related with the development and evolution layer of the monolith that they need to deal with. So we actually splitting bit by bit the monolith in the smaller bits and smaller applications, and we are leveraging the serverless fully managed services to actually offload the operations and save some time. Additional problem and the cutoff point was related with the entry point, because we had to preserve the existing layer in order to have the all networking layers and intrinsic details with the specificity of the example. And the one thing that I can tell for sure is that we've got a lot of edge locations that are whitelisted, and we are operating in a strict network environment. So it requires from us to preserve the same IPs that are whitelisted and so on and so on. So the entry point for the data intake had to be exactly the same as is, but we actually were leveraging the ability to use the feature flags and redirect the flow of the application inside the monolith instead. And yeah, that was a very interesting migration. However, not at all was bread and butter during that process. The truth is that we have very little technical issues on the path, and that's a great thing. Obviously, there are some traps within services, like in case of Amazon S3, we've got the problem with S3 event notifications and probably once delivery, as we snarky commented out the documentation for the AWS side. So there is this feature that allows you to put object inside the Amazon bucket, and then you will receive a notification as a result that can be processed by the Lambda, for example. Unfortunately, there are no guarantees regarding order, delivery time, delivery even as a completed delivery. So we snarky commented that they are implemented probably once delivery there. Additional problem is related with the costs, and there is a star in the pricing that if you are doing a lot of small puts and gets for so many small files, you will probably pay a lot for the requests, not for the storage. So that's another problem that we need to tackle, and we actually resolved with the use of the another service, because we implemented the Kinesis Data Firehose in order to leverage that. We've got some small issues with the X-Ray and integration with .NET Core for AWS Lambda and SQS, but that was not so problematic to fight with. And we obviously have the challenges with local development and debugging when it comes to the mindset and adjustments. But that was not a huge deal when it comes to the whole migration. There's a totally different set of the problems lurking in the darkness, in my opinion, and that was related with the Peopleware. Let's tackle those one by one. The problem with the local development was partially technical, but also related with the change in the mindset. I think that additional problem with outside of the local development, there is the additional challenges related with the event-driven architecture and understanding how it works. So people had some issues and troubles with understanding the EDA and how Lambda operates, what is the pricing model, what is the operational model, and so on and so on. When it comes to the operational change, it was even harder. A great example was how much our team fought for the access to the production AWS account to help operational teams with the troubleshooting. And again, it's very easy to judge, but the truth is that change doesn't happen overnight, and those people need to prove their trust to the operations people that they will not make their job more miserable at the end. So we eventually got the access, but it was related with the trust, and we need to prove that we can gain that trust and behave like a good citizens to the infrastructure. Another point related to the Terraform versus CloudFormation AWS SAM sounds like a technical issue, but it's not a technical issue at all, because it was basically an old versus new thing. We are introducing AWS SAM that was much easier for us, much more natural when it comes to the software development and integration with the CI/CD and the whole continuous delivery pipeline. The problem is that the operational side used Terraform on a daily basis. So we had to differentiate between those two layers, choose a cutoff point where the development team takes over, and then provide the other stuff in the Terraform for the people on the operational side to get the familiar thing for them, instead of introducing the whole new world and whole new technology for them. And last but not least, we've got constant fights with the priorities between the old and new platform. It is the typical thing that you need to deal with if you are redesigning something. You need to be prepared for that, and old priorities will always preempt your people that are involved in the new project. Again, it's understandable, but you need to have plan how to deal with that and bounce back those requests. And at the moment, project and team has a full product ownership. Project goes well. They are delivering regularly. They do deployments frequently, like twice, 3 times a week, do onboards and redesign the further parts of the monolith by splitting the complexity and so on and so on. everything sounds great, and yeah, my job as a consultant should be done, and we should be like in the fairy tales, like they live happily ever after, right? That was a partial thing, because COVID-19 strikes back and attacked our reality, and I know that many businesses was tremendously hit by the whole pandemic situation, but this particular client actually received a unique opportunity too. And there was another project that was in need when it comes to the serverless migration. This time it is a green field because they have a new team which has no AWS experience, and they have 3 weeks to deliver MVP. The truth is that they have 4 weeks, but they spent 1 week to actually prepare the designs and evaluations if they can do it with the old infrastructure. The truth is that they did the evaluation and they couldn't. So we need to tackle this a little bit differently. I have convinced the team that this 3 weeks MVP is doable. We will have a huge technical depth, but we can deliver this in 3 weeks. But again, we need to cut off some stuff, do the composition, and narrow down the scope. As a result, we have the successful delivery on time, and it turned out that technical challenges were not an issue again. We've got more problems with the Peopleware during that process. What was that project? Basically, it is a real-time video processing engine that evaluates each frame based on the previously trained model that should scale to having hundreds of video streams, obviously, eventually. But yeah, you get the point that in 3 weeks, it's not possible to do. And luckily, we have that model working and already trained. So that was another huge luck on our side. But there were some caveats as well. We obviously do everything with the serverless and fully managed services on AWS to cut as much time as we can in the implementation. But and it actually paid off, but it introduces a little bit small fights with the features. For example, we've got small fights with Amazon SageMaker in order to convert the model format that we have to the corresponding one inside SageMaker. There are some REST API limits that we hit. There are some hidden data transfer costs that we discover. After 1 day and a half, everything worked flawlessly anyway. We overcome those issues. Another problem is that some services on AWS are deliberately not serverless nor event-driven, like Kinesis video streams doesn't have any integration with AWS Lambda. Of course, there is an integration with Amazon Recognition Video, which is the absurdly expensive service, but you can do it in a fully serverless and fully managed way. The problem is that we need to use our custom model, so Recognition Video is out of the scope anyway. If you would like to do the custom implementation for the consumers for the AWS Fargate, we actually spent full 2 weeks to implement that on our side in order to have a scalable and also working version of the whole layer. Additionally, we discovered in anger, unfortunately, that some Amazon CloudWatch costs can be also really high, and we need to deal with that as well. However, at the end, the whole solution is cost efficient, it provides revenue, and it's scalable since day one. Obviously, there's an air quote because we cut off as many points on the delivery time in order to fulfill the 3 weeks that we spent another month to actually go back in time and reduce some work in order to have it scalable. But we were able to onboard 50 camera streams at the day one, and we actually onboarded more cameras on the old version day by day. Eventually, after 3 weeks of onboarding, we hit the hard limit when it comes to the AWS Fargate layer that we wrote in a not ideal way, and that's why we need to re-architect the whole solution. Again, as I said, the main challenges was related with the Peopleware and convincing people that they will be able to deliver and smash that accidental complexity. Because if you will think about it, and if you will go into someone's shoes that doesn't know AWS, and now somebody tries to explain you that, well, we will do this solution with those 14 services connected with the arrows and everything will be fine. Those people will not believe that, because they see only complexities, unknowns, and so on and so on. And the whole challenge was related to actually explain and build the trust, and also to build the confidence that they will deliver that, and those services will actually help them at the end. So let's do a recap what we achieved there. As I said, at first let's talk what we can do better. Definitely we can go more serverless than we are currently. We can go deeper. We are currently using Amazon Kinesis Data Firehose as an entry point, and we should use that service since the start, but we couldn't because of the whitelisting and so on. I think that we can also go with the predictable and planned monolithic database split, and that's the side effect that I explained to you. As it turned out, by accident, we have untangled the first piece that can be migrated to during the first phase of the monolithic database split. And we did that by accident because someone actually discovered that after redesigning the monolith internally, we can actually separate the one of the database into two databases and have full separation if we will move this one bit here and this one bit there. So rethinking the whole idea helped with the simplification process and actually untangled one bit, and probably after moving this bit we will be able to move another one, and so on and so on. Gradually we'll migrate off the whole project. Maybe we'll use AWS database migration service, who knows, maybe we'll do it manually depending on the necessity and needs. I think that the best three things that are related with the serverless services was related to building the cloud native culture in anger and on a very fast pace. It resulted at the end with a much better product ownership, in my opinion, because the operational effort and the learning curve was smaller and learning curve was less steeper, and people can engage much easier into building and operating that product at the end. So obviously we will not hide from the complexities of the distributed systems, microservice architectures, and so on, but those people were certain and confident that they can actually operate and manage that solution in the production at the end. That was not the case when they started this project, both project 1 and 2. Both teams, they didn't have any experience and expertise in managing their software in production. I know that it sounds like an anti-pattern, and in many organizations we are already beyond the DevOps culture, but there are still some companies where such situation is it's not a status quo. So we need to build that cloud native culture in anger instead. Another point about the fully managed services was the scalability and availability built into the solution, and that helped to actually ease the operation, but also help to when it comes to the operation and gain the confidence with that. That came with the lower maintenance cost and effort, and helped the IT team, operations team that was already overloaded, to not be overloaded by the new projects anyway. And obviously faster development and evolution, but you need to know what you are doing. I'm really proud of both teams because I think that we won in a tremendous way because of that built cloud native culture and product ownership since day one. I was proud because they fought over the access to the production account. They took care about the costs since day one. They even produced very complicated spreadsheets that calculated everything dynamically when it comes to the costs and cost efficiency of the whole solution. So we built very interesting product ownership culture inside, thanks to the ability to deploy in less complicated way than we planned to and we could do with the microservice architecture, for example. I would like to emphasize on 3 things at the end. I think that the challenge with serverless, it's not technical. It requires culture and people shift, a mind shift in particular. I think that the both teams actually proved that. We have introduced cloud native services, new programming paradigms like event-driven architecture, new architecture moving from monolith to serverless, Docker, because eventually we use Docker with the Fargate, and people smashed those technical issues without any problems. The biggest challenges that we observed were related with approach to the software development and how they have to change that approach in order to deliver. And overcoming that complexity and building that confidence was the key part of the success for the both project, I think. Secondly, I think that you can be really fast when it comes to the software development process thanks to the fully managed services and serverless. Caveat, you need to know exactly what you are doing and you need to be very diligent about choosing the path. Otherwise, you will drown into the accidental complexity of the cloud services portfolio and eventually you will get nothing. And as a third thing, I think assuming that you know what you are doing and team is capable of technical delivery, I think that there is a shortcut from monolith to serverless and you don't have to invest initially, at least initially, time in learning microservice architecture complexities. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that you will escape this. Eventually you will face it because the serverless and microservice have common denominator, as I said. Those are distributed systems by nature. What I wanted to say is that with serverless and fully managed services, issues will surface later in the process. Operational complexity is much lower and will be easier to attack and build that cloud native culture in anger, in a more pragmatic way, still delivering the value to the client. Yeah, and that's everything what I prepared today. Thanks for the presence and attention. And if there are any questions, I will happily answer them.